One of the topics was, if you could have one wish, what would it be? And I assumed that most would be wishes to get out of prison or something of that nature. Instead, many were cries of the heart, cries to love and be loved. One essay stated, if I could have one wish, I would wish for a letter from my mother. She hasn't written me in years, and it would mean so much for me to get a letter from her. Another inmate had a 2-year-old daughter who was with foster parents, and he declared that his wish would be to hear his daughter on the phone. I told him she wouldn't be able to say much at the age of 2, and he replied, I just want to hear the sound of her voice. As I read these essays, I was reminded that we never lose our deep basic need to connect with the soulfulness of each other's heart. Each of us has a story to tell, and we're traveling our personal road of transformation. Listening to the stories of others and the cries of their hearts is a kind of water that breaks the fever of our isolation. If we listen closely enough, we are soothed into remembering our common name. I believe that when we express our truth, it releases light and warmth. It's the way our spirit shines. These essay readers were my medicine, and I was theirs. We are members of a broken whole, and we will heal a stitch, a song, a cry at a time. Isn't he a great writer? Yeah. So, as I said, I want to speak about manifesting your dreams. And I want to start with a quote. Later I'm going to talk about Eric Butterworth, but I want to begin with a quote from him. He said, within me is the unborn possibility of limitless living, and mine is the privilege of giving birth to it. Isn't that great? So, each of us, what we teach is each of us gets to dream our own dream, and our highest ideal about how we want our life to unfold. And what I love about this teaching is that we teach that we can all live our dream, and it gives us the tools to help us do that. And one of the other things we teach is that Spirit gives its gifts by pouring itself through us. Our consciousness acts like a magnet, and that we should expect our dreams. We should expect them to manifest. So that's what I'm going to be speaking about today. And one of the things Ernest Holmes says is that we wouldn't experience these inner desires if we didn't have a way to make them come to fruition. He said, what kind of God would it be that would give us these yearnings, these yens to do whatever it is, to be an artist, a singer, whatever we have, if then we didn't have the way to make them come true. That would be pretty cruel. And Holmes wrote about a cartoon he had seen. In the cartoon, it was this fellow was sleeping, and he was having a nightmare, and there was a monster on the front foot of his bed, and the monster looked like it was going to attack. And this fellow in his dream says to the monster, "What are you going to do with me?" And the monster says, "Don't ask me, it's your dream. What are you going to do with me?" And so the question facing each of us is, what are we going to do with our dream? Will we let it sit? Will we hope? Will we yearn for it? Or will we focus our thinking and become a vessel for Spirit to give us that gift that we so rightly deserve? And for all of us, when we step forward in consciousness, our dreams become a reality. We realize that we've gone from dreaming to living it. And the Buddha said, only those who go where few have gone can see what few have seen. So, unless we're willing to step out and do it, we don't get to see it. So I was reading a portion of a book this week by a lady named late Lynn Grabhorn, And so she said, how do we get what we get in life? She said, why do some people seem to have it all and some people not? Why did he get a promotion and she didn't? And she said, let me tell you a story that brought it home to me. And she tells a story about a friend of hers who came to her and said, my son's playing Little League baseball this Saturday. I want you to come to the game. And so Lynn said, how come? And she said, I'm not going to tell you. You'll see when you come to the game. And so that piqued her curiosity. So she comes to the game, and in the bottom of the first inning, this lady's son gets up to bat. And his name is Jesse. And Lynn said he was so small that it looked like the bat was taller than he was. And it looked like he could barely control it. Well, he gets up and he hits a home run so far out, they never found the ball. He gets up the second time and he hits another one, and the third time another one, and the fourth time another one. And so after the game, Lynn sat down in the bleachers with him, and she said, Jesse, how do you do this? And he said to her, I don't know. Every time I get up, I think about it, and I feel what it's like to connect, and I do. And Lynn said, he just explained the law of attraction to me. Like attracts like. And what we think and what we feel are what we manifest. And what a beautiful example. This little kid who could barely hold the bat had that in his head, and look what he did. So it got me to thinking, and I think a couple of years ago I told this story, but it's a perfect example of like attracting like or not. And so when we were in Arizona, when Beck and I were in Arizona, one Sunday after we were there a while, one of the women came up to me and she said, what's the church need? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, what do you need? And she said, come on, let's take a walk. So she said, I got it. We walked into the kitchen. She said, that microwave is really old. How'd you like a new microwave? So I said, okay. And she said, you want to know why? And I said, yep. And she said, my husband and I, every 6 or 8 weeks, we go to Laughlin, and we always win. So this week, my winnings will go to buy the church a microwave. The next week she came in, she gave me $250, and she said, there's your new microwave. Couple of weeks later, or 6 weeks later, whoop, she came to me and she said, I've been looking, that TV is 1,000,000 years old. We need a new TV. We're going to Laughlin this week. The next week she came and she gave me, I forgot how much money she gave me, but we bought a brand new TV. And so we talked about it, and in all the time we were there, every time they went to Laughlin, they either won, they never lost in the entire time we were there. They either won or they broke even, but they never lost. And we talked about it, and she said, I forgot her husband's name, I think it was Harry. She said, we set the intention, we're gonna win, like when you give me something to get you, and it always happens. And what it brought back to me, when I was married to my first wife, we went on a couple of trips to places where they had gambling, like Aruba and the Bahamas. And what we would do every night, we would go back to our room after dinner, and we knew how much money we could afford to spend every day, you know, when you're young and you don't have a lot. And so let's say we knew we had $100 to spend that night. I'd say, here's your 50, I got my 50, and after we lose it all, we'll meet at the bar. And this was way before we got into this philosophy. But after speaking to this lady in Phoenix, it hit me that years ago, we were setting the intention that every night we were gonna lose, and every night we never ever won. You know, it's what you do with your thinking. And you know, another way to look at this, Mary Morrison says, you know, so many of us define ourselves by our past. I am what happened to me. And you know, she said past circumstances don't have to define our lives, because we always have a choice. we're always at choice. And she has a quote in here I love from Emerson. He says, "There is no planet, sun, or star that could hold you if you but knew who you are." And so Mary talks about what I've been talking about, being a conscious creator, somebody who partners with God to build the life that they want. And she suggests 3 steps that we could take to do that. And one of them is to honor our discontent. You know, if we're feeling that we could be more, to honor that, to let it come through, and to really explore our deep desires. And she said the second one is, and practice repeating up until now. So if you know, when we talk about your past not defining you, if you've had something that you haven't been successful at, instead of saying I can never do this or it's way beyond me, up until now I haven't done this, and it opens up a pathway for you to lose that negative thinking and just say, okay, maybe up until now I couldn't do it, but I can and I will do it. And then the third piece is to consciously co-create with God, and then the impossible becomes true. And I would just add, in Ernest Holmes talked about mental equivalence. And what a mental equivalent is when you want something, to really take time to be quiet, to be still, and to picture what it is, to have a mental equivalent of what it is you want, to see it, to hear it, to touch it, to feel it. The more alive that we could make that desire and to build up that feeling, the quicker and more likely we are to be able to manifest that. Because the greatest power we have really is to direct our thoughts, and that's what helps make our dream come true. We need to take responsibility for what it is that we want. You know, I was reading something this week about athletes, and how athletes are really no different than you and me. You know, they're people, and what separates us from them is they know what they want, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get it. And you know, I hadn't intended to talk about this, but a couple of years ago, I talked about Steve Nash, who was a basketball player. He played mostly for Phoenix, and his brother wrote an article that his brother was really the athlete in the family, a much better athlete than Steve Nash. But his brother wrote that, and Steve was born in Canada, to give you an idea of the weather. He said, but when you look out the window and it was raining, Steve would be out there shooting baskets. No matter what it took, he would do it. And his brother said, I really like my life now, but sometimes I look back and I say, if I had his drive, that could have been me. That could have been. Steve Nash was a little guy too, and he was voted the most valuable player in the NBA twice, just because he knew. And that's what this person writing said. They're willing to do whatever it takes. You know, we all have our dreams, and our dreams begin with a thought and a possibility. And we need to realize anything is possible. We're working with the force that created everything we see, everything that's out there, and nothing is impossible to spirit. So when we team up with that spirit, nothing is impossible to us. We just need to make choices and then act on them. And one question we can ask ourselves is, if my dream is really possible, what's the first thing I would do? And then do it. If my dream is possible, what's the first thing I would do? And then do it. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be something big. You know, it's just take a step in the right direction. So I was reading this week, actually I wasn't reading, Becky came to me this week, and she saw something on the internet, and she said, take a look at this. I think it would fit in to your talk. So it was a minister named Roger Teal was talking about what does it mean to be off course in our life. And he said, that reminds me of a story, that question. And he said, it's about a couple who were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. And in the same year they're celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary, they're turning 60 years old. And they're sitting around, they were married at 20. See, I knew you needed help. So they're sitting around, and a fairy comes. And the fairy says to them, you people have lived a really nice life, and I know you're celebrating an anniversary and a birthday this year. You both get one wish. And so she turns to the woman.
Oh, God.
My wish is for electricity.
So she turns to the woman, and she says to the woman, what would you like? And the woman says, I would like an all-expense-paid romantic vacation with my husband. And poof, just like that, the tickets are there. And she turns to the husband, and she said, and what would you like? And he kind of hems and haws, and she says, come on, tell me, what would you like? And he says, I would like to be with a woman that's 30 years younger than me. And poof, she turns him into a 90-year-old. So I just have to tell you, we're not recording this? We are? That doesn't matter. I said to Becky, I think I'm gonna change that and have the guy say he wants a romantic vacation and the woman says she wants a man 30 years younger. What do you think the reaction would be? And Becky said, I don't know, but don't do it. So I listened. So I talked about Eric Butterworth before, and I always say this when I talk about him. I think Eric Butterworth, who's a late Unity minister, was the greatest New Thought teacher in our life, not counting Holmes or the people that started Unity, but in our lifetime. So he said, I want to give you another quote. He said, things may happen around you, things may happen to you, but the only things that really count are the things that happen in you. And so he talks, he said, you know, I used the expression before, we're like magnets, and he said again, we're like living magnets, all of us, that we draw the people and the circumstances that match our thoughts to us. So he said, wherever you are in your life, wherever you are, that's where your consciousness is. So it's so easy. I was talking to somebody this week, it's so easy when your life is really good to say, yep, that's where my consciousness is. Mm-hmm. And when it's not, it's like her fault or my parents' fault or, you know, not anybody. But the truth is, wherever we are, that's what we drew to us. And he says one of his favorite Bible verses is from Mark, all things are possible to him that believeth. And he says, so Jesus was always centered in God. And he said most of us are centered in various levels of limitation. And he goes on, he said, you know, faith, when we talk about faith doesn't make God work for us. No matter how much faith we have, we're not going to convince God to do this or do that. What we believe in New Thought is that faith tunes us in to the divine flow that's always there. That's what our faith does when we teach our method of prayer. That's what that does. It centers us back into where God is, and it doesn't touch, you know, God. You can pray for God to come down and do stuff, but it's not going to happen because God doesn't interfere in our lives. And so faith is an active and a positive act of tuning in to something that is always present. That divine flow is always there. And so when we want something in our life, or when we're not feeling in a great way. What our faith does and our prayer work does is tune us back in to that divine flow that's always there. And again, I hadn't thought about doing this, but he compares it to a rheostat. You know, a lot of people have rheostats in their dining room, and he says, you know, the power in the rheostat is always the same. We get to choose, you know, if you have it low, it's dim. If you have it high, you get more light. But the power is always there. And he said it's the same thing with God. God's power and God's flow is always there. If we tune in a little bit, we get a little bit. And if we tune in a lot, we have more of God pouring through us, and it's our choice. So I thought it would be good to talk about some things we can do to help us manifest our dreams. So I'm going to talk about 3 or 4, and one of them is, and it's easy to talk about, not as easy to do, is we can develop trust. Trust that the universe is with us. Trust that the universe will support what we want. You know, Einstein once said, the most important question anybody could ask is the universe a friendly place? And what we're saying is it is, and we can trust in that. And another technique we can use, you know, I talked about before about seeing, touching, feeling what we want. One of the ways we can do that is to tap into our subconscious. So think about this before you go to sleep at night. Make your wish your mantra. So let's say you are looking for a relationship. Maybe you could repeat the word, lie in bed right before you go to sleep and repeat the word romance for a few minutes. Wow, I got a lot of laughter there. That was, okay. I'm not even going to touch why. But if you repeat that, it's a way of activating your subconscious that'll be working when you're sleeping. Another thing we could do is to take action, to listen to our intuition. You know, if our intuition is telling us, call this person, do this, do that, to listen to it and to do it. You know, Thoreau said, go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Endeavor to live the life you have imagined, and you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. So another one of the really wonderful unity ministers in our day and time, in fact, she's still around, but she just retired, is Edwene Gaines. And I know they've had her in Unity, and we've had her, and actually Unity and us teamed up to sponsor her a couple of years ago. And in her book, Edwene says that her favorite Bible quote, or one of them, is, "And whatsoever you will ask in my name, that I will do. And whatsoever you will ask in my name, that I will do." And she says, it says, whatsoever you ask in my name, you'll get it. No qualifications, no ifs, no ands, and no buts. And she said, you know, God isn't glorified by you being in poverty. God isn't glorified by your illness. And God isn't glorified by you running around and playing small and being a victim. She said, God is glorified when you stand up and you claim your birthright. And she said, and who are you? Who are you? You are a divine being, a person who deserves every good thing the universe has to offer. And so I want to close with a quote from The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell. And he wrote, "We have not even to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path. And where we had thought to find an abomination, we shall find God. Where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. Where we had thought to travel outward, we shall come to the center of our own existence. Where we had thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world." God bless you. Thank you for being here, and have a great week.